Hello and welcome to the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is another connected conversation episode, and I'm very grateful to have as my guest Dan Wolfe. Dan is a assistant principal at Sunray Elementary in Florida, and we were just talking sports and teams and connections. Also, Dan is the author of a book called Becoming the Change, which comes from the Road to Awesome Publishing cohort given to us by Darren Papard. And we also had a previous author from that umbrella here on the podcast a few months ago, Bobby Policino. So again, just a great to be on the road to awesome with Dan here and the road to many things. Dan, welcome to the Principal Liner Notes podcast, pal.
Thank you so much, Sean, for having me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise, my friend. And as we are recording this episode, it is an early Sunday afternoon. It is the 1st of October. And you and I at the beginning of the podcast talked a little bit about the NFL and kind of our mutual connections there. So we'll probably take some side roads into NFL and quarterback leadership.
Sounds good.
So tell us a little bit about the origin for your book, Becoming the Change. I know that you put a lot of heart and soul into the writing of that book, and it reflects a lot of who you are as a leader. But what was the impetus for the book?
Well, it all started with, and everything is around social emotional learning, or as you know, we have a million acronyms in education, SEL. Our district at the time went ahead and wrote. I was a part of a district committee, K-12 SEL standards, because we always talk about the whole child, and many times it's always on the academic side of it. But we wanted, as a district, to focus on the social emotional to really make that complete. Because I always believe that if academics is the lock, SEL is the key to open that lock to many pathways for our kids. So during that time, I've always been a big fan of quotes. And there was a quote by Michelle Obama that said, "I've learned that as long as I hold fast to my beliefs and values and follow my own moral compass, then the expectations they need to live up to are my own."
Hmm.
And that really resonated with me with the 5 areas of social emotional learning. I was writing a blog at the time, which I'm still doing. I did take a little bit of a break from it, but where I take quotes by famous people and then what it means to me at that certain time in my life and how it
Hmm.
relates to one of the 5 areas. And because with quotes, they mean different things at different stages of our lives. You read something now, 10 years from now, it's going to be completely different because of your experiences, whatever else you're going through. And that's where the idea of the book started coming together. It really came together right around the pandemic. So when I wasn't on Zoom with my school and teachers and kids and everything, I had some downtime that I was able to. I said, you know what, I want to go ahead and do this now. I think this is a good time for it. The tragedy of what happened with George Floyd happened as well, so it just was the right time. Because in life we're always trying to improve, and the cover of my book for Becoming the Change is that of a butterfly, and it's dealing with that evolution of becoming our best self. So they go from a caterpillar to a butterfly. We're continuing to evolve as human beings, and that's really where the premise came from. And along with that was also the image of I talked about moral compass, and if you think of like a compass, when you're lost in the woods, that helps you find your way. Well, these 5 areas, and I can definitely go into what these 5 areas are for your listeners if you'd like me to. Um, at the epicenter is the compass is your self-awareness, and self-awareness is knowing our inner selves and what makes us tick. I like to look at it kind of like a mechanic knows the inner workings of a car, and we're like the inner we are the mechanics of our lives. So
Mm,
that's at the epicenter. And so the other four areas I'll describe all go back into that. You're always going to have that connectedness. And then for those four cardinal directions, you have self management, where we're in the driver's seat. We control what our thoughts, our actions, and we control our destiny. Then you have social awareness. One of the things that I think is the biggest challenge that we face as a society is this area in particular. That allows us to look at things through another person's perspective, through their lens. It
mm,
helps us understand our place in the world through acceptance and unity. Doesn't mean we always agree with everyone, but if we respect them and their thoughts and opinions, we'll go that much further as a society, as a culture.
mm.
Then you go into relationship skills, and those really are innate qualities that we have with others, including ourselves. Because if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, how can we have it with others? It's an element we can't live without. And then what wraps it all together is responsible decision making. As author and podcaster Seth Godin once said, decisions are our choices,
Mhm.
and in those responsible decisions, they have a direct effect not only on ourselves but on those around us, and that happens within our families, within our jobs as administrators, or whatever career someone has. They're always we always make sure to have our decisions with an open heart and an open mind, and they'll go that much further. So that was where things kind of came together. So I had those images in my head, and then it just came to fruition.
Nice. That's beautifully wrought, pal. You mentioned that one of the pieces of the compass, social awareness, is the biggest challenge. Why is that?
Because it's and I think a lot of it, and it's even harder for our kids today, with the social media and dealing with, as I tell a lot of my kids, even though they're elementary, they have accounts and things. A little bit too early in my perspective, but again,
Agreed.
that's just my opinion.
Agreed.
But I said, if you're going for the number of likes, but you're not just putting your content out there, or whatever your opinion is, or
Mm,
whatever, just because that's what your thoughts are, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I think a lot of times it social media, or just media itself, just kind of curbs our thoughts and our opinions in ways, and it becomes very negative, and no longer is everyone always listening to each other's perspectives. What's interesting, and even I live in Florida, and I'm sure everybody knows Florida is always in the news, especially lately with education and a lot of the things. We're not even allowed to call it SEL anymore. It's evolved from SEL to social and academic standards. Now it's resiliency standards. Still has the underlying tone, but I guess with words bother people in some respects. So I joke that my book is only sold in 49 out of 50 states, just not where I reside in. But
yeah.
and it's just unfortunate, because again, it's like it's the fear of the unknown. It's a
Mhm.
lot of those things, and instead of we even have the things with the banned books and things like that, but there's no substance of why the books are banned. Someone just made a decision, these are banned for whatever reason, and then you have to make your, so it's just a lot of politics. Would never seem like it was a part of the education repertoire, but now it is. It's
Yeah.
in everything we do, unfortunately, and and that's where I think we need to somehow go back to hit the reset button and really kind of focus on what's best for the kids, and that should be it.
So let's go there for just a second. How does someone like you and the leader that you are, how are you able to navigate within that landscape? I mean, when you touched on that, it just hit me, and this is something that leaders deal with sometimes, or innovators deal with sometimes, is that we're not we're not always welcomed or invited in our own neighborhood, right?
Hmm.
Or we're not always supported in our own backyard. And I love how you said, my book is sold in 49 out of the 50 states. But then also too, my heart breaks a little bit for you, pal. And
Hmm.
so how do you as a leader who is very grounded and very centered in your core. I mean, you have a very distinct belief and leadership system. Um, how are you able to navigate in a landscape, your own landscape, that may not always be accepting or may not always be supportive?
Well, I try to always take a step back and look at things and realize I can only control what I control.
Mm,
There's I'm a big fan of the Stoicism philosophy. Big Ryan Holiday fan. Love his books, his podcast, things like that. It's really been able to, even when I didn't know SEL or Stoicism at the time growing up existed, I always tried to lean on those principles with any trials and tribulations. I've held many different positions in my career, from a teacher to an instructional coach, district curriculum specialist, administrator. And each of those I try to look at through the lens of whoever I'm working with, staff, families, different things. I know what it doesn't mean I don't have my own thoughts and my beliefs and things, but it's all about timing and knowing who my audience is and then adapting. I think in education, I look at myself kind of like a chameleon and being able to adapt to the environment or the surroundings. So knowing my audience, knowing what kinds of things, and letting teachers know, whether they're veteran teachers or first year teachers, that things in education will come and go and they'll just be rebranded a different name, even though it's the same concepts. You just have to roll with it. And that's where you're going to get your longevity from, is if you go ahead and get yourself caught up in certain parts and you just hone in on those, and you'll get lost in the murky waters and of education and things like that, and you don't want to get brought down by those things. And it's just, even just in my personal life, trials and tribulations. One of the things, and I know we'll get into it when we talk about music and things like that, when I was a senior in high school, and it was just my 31-year anniversary of my dad unexpectedly passing away at 50, and I did had to do a project, a tribute to, or think of something, and I wanted to do a tribute to him. So I analyzed Eric Clapton's "Tears in Heaven," and it just was, and I broke down what the song, and I know what it meant for him and his son, and that
yeah.
tragedy. But then I put the spin and perspective of what it meant to me and what I was experiencing at 17, going through that and not knowing what direction and things. And again, like I said earlier, I didn't have the SEL competencies in those things, but I sure leaned on those things, relationship skills and
Mhm.
controlling my emotions and being there for my family, and knowing my audience for the social awareness, all those kinds of things. It just, and each of these, trials and tribulations have just led me to where I am today,
Mhm.
and that's what I just attribute a lot of those kind of experiences. And I hope I answered your question in regards to where you originally had asked in regards to that. It's just choosing. Timing is everything, and being able to, know it's again. I'll reference Kenny Rogers, knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. I mean, that's really what
Nice.
it is. Life is gambling. Whether you think you're a gambler or not, you're taking risks. Things work out. Sometimes they don't. And that's just, you just kind of, you just roll with it.
Absolutely. And nod to Steve Winwood there. I'll build
Well,
on that
that's
music
right. Yeah, I
analogy,
know. I was
man.
going to say that too, but
Yeah. I'll take it. I'll take that. I tell you, Dan, it is refreshing and for how you frame that, because it's real easy, and maybe this is the influence of the Stoics, but it's real easy to default to a level of negativity and self-pity, when we're not accepted, or we don't feel like we're accepted, or it's like, well, here's this legislation that is this barrier, or here's this attitude that I'm dealing with. But it is refreshing and inspiring how you've pivoted, because you could have easily, in the response to that question, gone down a very justifiable dark path. That's pretty neat, man.
Mhm. Yeah, no, yeah, it is, and it is, and I mean, even in my professional career, I'll just give an example for that. There was a time that when I was an administrator and everything early on in my career, and my daughter was young, a lot was put on my wife and everything. We had a lot of night events and things, and I felt like I was missing out on those opportune times to be with them and watch her grow and everything. So I decided to take a step down and went back into the classroom as an instructional coach. And I didn't know if I'd ever come back to the administrative thing, the realm. But I believe everything happens for a reason. It led me to getting experience as a coach, which I think led me to having a better perspective and understanding, being that middle person in between teacher and administrator to see things through their lens. I was blessed to be nominated and won District Teacher of the Year back in 2011-12 for my county. And it got me into a district role, which led me back to administration. And I'm now in a principal's pool waiting for that next opportunity. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I have thought that? Absolutely not. I would not have known. But it's life is a roll of the dice, and you just see where you kind of land. And I'm glad I wouldn't change anything for it.
Yeah, it's powerful. I've taken positions in my own career that have been motivated by family, whether it was proximity,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was time for my daughters, and often, when you get to principal land, folks will ask you, well, are you going to superintendent land? And I'm not,
Yeah,
because it has that's a level that for me, I know that I can't give. I mean, principal gig, it's a challenge to give 100% to your family. I struggle with that.
right.
And I know that if I were to go to another level, that I wouldn't be able to give all that I can for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it has. I've often seen it as well. Okay, missed opportunity. But if that's going to give me 5 more minutes in my day with my family, or another hour, or another day, or another week, or to be able to be there however I can,
Right.
I'll do it,
Mm-hmm.
and take my ego out of the equation, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So that's powerful. One of the things too, and again, just your groundedness as a leader, you also have a mantra that I'd love for you to riff on a little bit, and that mantra is serve, lead, and inspire. So I'm curious to see how you arrived at those three words, and then the second part, how do you live those out? How do those mirror in your activities as a school leader, and maybe even in your personal life?
All right, yeah, and I actually have those. It's part of my alarm when I wake up in the morning. You can put your little message, so when it goes off in the morning before I go to the gym, it starts off as serve, lead, and inspire. So it just sends that reminder to start off the day.
Mm,
That's what I'm living by and everything. It really all originated through a lot through my experiences. Probably one of the most rewarding experiences is when I was part of a district team. Our district at the time had regional teams, and I was lucky to be on the Northwest team, and we served 18 Title I schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. I was a mathematics curriculum specialist, and we had different people from math, language arts, MTSS, professional development. Then we had an area superintendent that would oversee it. And his name is Todd Clough. And I have always looked at him as a mentor and just admired just his mannerisms and how he wanted to know all the school stories. And it was all about the relationships for us to establish with these 18 schools. Because many times when they think, oh, well, district's coming out, well, we're all part of the same district, but it's just a
yeah,
different aura that it kind of gives out.
yeah,
But we didn't have that as a style. That wasn't our style. It was having those relationships. And when I think of servant leadership, he embodied that. And that's really where the serve came from, is being able to serve others, be able to give back. It wasn't just about the academics, it was about being there within the community, being part of the 18 different communities that we served. Because even though every Title I school that we served, they were a different Title I. It wasn't the same. There was not the same blueprint. They all had their own unique brand to it. So that's where things really came to be. And then in the roles for the that I've led, whether it's been in the classroom or my different positions, I just knew behind that serve, you have that lead, and you just have to, lead with your heart and your mind. And I like, for me, it's the heart first, then it's the mind. It's many times it's always the mind, then the heart, but that not for me. And then just to inspire was where you want to leave your legacy. The legacy is not going to be on those on the data, or what your
Mm.
school grade was or whatever. It's going to be the impact that you had on the lives of your students, your families, your staff. Those are the things that matter. That's your legacy, and really those are the things that I want to leave, even for my own personal family too. And that's why when I step down and things, those are the kinds of things, the legacy, the family came first, those kinds of things. And because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And that's what I try to. So when, people are worried, well, Dan, I don't want to miss these days. I said, well, you've got this going on with your family right now. Go do that. You don't want to leave no stone unturned. And I think a lot of it really comes back to when my dad passed away, and the things that he's always been there, but you know uh in a different form. But I mean, he didn't get to see a lot of those kinds of things personally, to be, and I think about those things. You don't want to leave those stones unturned. You don't want to have those regrets. I mean, because it's just, that's where that mantra's been. And I think if I always just remind myself of that, I even have it on those mantra bands that you can even have. I have that. I have it engraved: serve, lead, and inspire. I have it
Mm.
as part of my handles, a lot of the things that I have, on the social media. And it's one thing to say it, like I said, but it's another thing to do it and live it. And because if you don't do that, then what's the purpose of having a mantra at all? Then.
Right on, man. Beautifully stated. And with Inspire, I like how you connected that to legacy, which I think is something that is missing in the everyday patois of leadership language. You don't hear about legacy. At least I didn't hear about legacy um, enough when I went to principal school,
Mhm.
and it reminds me of the last guest, or guest before last, um, that I had on the podcast, Megan Lawson, and she
Mhm.
talked about legacy, and she's got a book coming out, in which legacy is in the title. But I think so. So how does one, as a leader, because again, the serve part, sure, we get it totally.
Right.
The lead part, absolutely. And then the inspire part, which again, and I love how you just drilled that down as well. Really, the output of inspire is legacy. So
Mhm.
maybe an example in your everyday gig as an AP, or maybe another an example in your leadership, um, cycle in which you felt that you left a legacy. So for our listeners, because I really think this concept of legacy goes missing and goes unsaid in the gig, because it denotes so many good things. So I'd love to hear an example of that piece.
Well, I think one of the things, and it was, so I had mentioned when I had stepped down, and the school that I left, it was very hard. I had to send. It was over the summer. I had to send them an email and everything, which is not the way that I wanted to do it. It's just how things kind of played out. Um, Funny thing is, fast forward to 2016, I had the opportunity to go back to that same school as an assistant principal. Could not have, and there were still staff members that were there. So what we decided to do, the principal and I, was to surprise the staff, and because they didn't know who their next AP was going to be and
Mhm.
everything. So I
That's
came
awesome.
in, I hid in the janitor's closet, and I came into the song by John Bon Jovi, Who Said You Can't Go Home. And I
Nice.
came into that. Now it took me a while to get out of the janitor's closet because I'm tripping over mops and everything. Because the people that knew about it are like, "Where is he?" So they recorded it, and just the staff that was still there just gave such a wonderful reception. Now the new people didn't had no idea who I was, and
Mhm.
but they just the reaction that they saw of their colleagues. And then I was there for the next right up until spring of 2022, and just what I was able to go ahead and do. They even when I left because I was needed at another school, another Title I school, just with my my experience, and they said we definitely need you for your SEL when we were allowed to
Mhm.
still say that at the time. We need you at the other school. They did a clap out for me, the school I was leaving, and just the signs and what the kids left me, and just and I'm still told how much I'm missed and everything. And just so, if anything, I left an imprint on their hearts. And that's where
Mhm.
that legacy, and that's something that, I, I can't capture it in a bottle or anything
Yeah.
and anything, but it's just something, I didn't always know if I was doing things right. I mean, I made my mistakes and things,
Mhm.
but obviously I must have done something, well, in that they still will let me know how much that I've meant to them and still mean to them. I'm hoping I'm making that same impact at Sunray right now, is what my hope is, in regards to it. But I think it's those kinds of things. Um, Letting people know how much you care. I also do everyday gratitude messages that I send out. I record myself, and I did that during the pandemic just to try to keep some continuity. I would
Yeah.
read a quote about gratitude and then send it out to the staff. So I put those things out. I still do that to this day, asking about their family. It's not always
Mhm.
the business side of things, because yes, that part comes with it, but it's really getting to know them. They want to be known as people, just like the kids do. The kids, they don't need to know the outside pressures of the testing and everything.
Mhm.
I have kids that need to know where they're going to sleep at night and things like that. That's
Mhm.
what's on their mind. And if I can ease their mind for 6 hours or whatever, and just know that they are safe and cared about,
Yeah.
because I always let them know, I said, my job is to keep you safe, and your job is to help keep it safe. And that they know that, that's all that I matter. We have fist bump Fridays and things like that, and they get off the bus and they know that, and they'll give me a hug or whatever else. And I mean, that's all, that's what they need. Those are the memories that are going to last,
Mhm.
not the what they scored on a test and everything. As I know, society gets focused on that a lot of the time, where we rank with everybody else. But this is what they need to hear. They need to know that they're still good in the world, that they can still, whatever their circumstances. I use a quote: "If it's to be, it's up to me." Anything in life that you want, you need to go out and get it. Life is going to deal you with a lot of things in life, things you don't want, but what are you going to do to overcome it? It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. We can all attain that. It's within our innate ability to, if we choose to.
Wow. Beautifully said, Dan. You mentioned, some of the things that inspire you in terms of reading the Stoics and Ryan Holiday and his work, and you dropped, your love for quotes, Michelle Obama and Seth Godin in his podcast. But in the kind of the little thing that I do in my Calendly, where I say, "What music are you listening to?"
Mhm.
And you have a very exhaustive, comprehensive list. And I won't ask you to like name every artist there, but I am curious because I always love that intersection between music and leadership and music and education. What musicians, what albums inspire you or drive your leadership in this kind of, well, really not your leadership, but what I would call human centered leadership? What are those artists or bands that drive you?
Yep. And one of the things like we were talked about in the pre-show was just, it's whatever the mood sets,
Yeah.
depending on that time and period of the day, what's going on in my life. If it's if it's writing and things like that, or just needing that reflective piece, I'll listen to Enya. Enya was
Yeah.
always a big thing for me to be able to. Even in college, we had Enya. We used that for our power naps in between classes, and it
Mhm.
was just, my roommates and I would just play that and just take a what we called a power nap for a and it was just nice to just very calming. And we had definitely set our alarms because you can definitely go for hours with it if you don't set that alarm for that power nap. But anyways, I think things like Bon Jovi has been a big thing, whether it's been the Slippery When Wet album or New Jersey.
Hmm.
U2 with their greatest hits, their singles, Queen, Elton John, um, anything with rap, Dr. Dre. I mean, really, it's just I'm all over the map, you know. And like I said, I don't know if it's my attention deficit disorder as an adult that was diagnosed or what, but it's just I think it's whatever I need to rely on, whatever I'm being faced with any leadership challenges. I think that's where I kind of dip into whether I'm looking for an idea or looking for some inspiration. It just really, do I need something soothing to just be able to calm my thoughts and be able to
Hmm.
think with a level head? Okay, what's our next move with that? Is it something that's going to be like a motivational track or something like that, where it's LL Cool J and it's Mama Said Knock You Out, and something that's going to just inspire me to be okay? This is what we've got to do with that. It
Yeah.
really just it really is, like I said before, leaving no unstern, no stone unturned. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with what I try to do within my leadership style or in my own personal life. It's whatever I'm needing at that moment, and I think that's what music does for me. It's got such a wide range of things that would be able to really bring things together, bring things full circle, bring that focus, that centeredness that I'm looking for. And what's great is that even have the streaming available now to be able to go on Amazon Music or whatever and find it without having to, when growing up, finding that tape deck or finding the record player at the time to see if I could use it, or was my brother using whatever it is at the
Yeah.
time. Now it's just nice to just put it on the phone and find it right away. It just, yeah, and I think it also brings the connectedness to the kids too. I try to listen to today's music as well, just because
Hmm.
the kids, what shocks them, they're like, "What? Wait, why does Mr. Wolf know this song?" I said,
Yeah.
"What is there an age range that I'm not? Am I too old to listen?" They said, "No, no, no. It just shocked us that I said I'm not going to say I'm a Swiftie, but I mean I do know who Taylor Swift is,
Right
and
on.
I do, so just those kinds of things. So it just, I don't know, it just, we talk, it makes me feel whole, I guess is the best way.
Mhm. Music does that. I mean, it's that entry point. It's that connection, and it does give us that sense of balance and wholeness. So I appreciate you sharing that. The other kind of connection that we talked about in the pre-show, because it is Sunday and we talked a little bit about football and some of the connections. And I will say, and we talked a little baseball too, but I will say this. You mentioned Mets, and I'm good with that, but I'm Red Sox man, and there was a little World Series that happened in
Yes.
1986. It's okay. I'm good with that. We're still friends. Um, but what is it about and what I appreciate too is probably kind of like the teams that I root for and cheer for, very much the underdog.
Hmm.
And I know you're a big Broncos fan. So let's go there. Let's talk a little bit about some parallels and meaning from your love of football. And we talked a little bit about Elway and
Hmm.
the drive and those things.
I think with like Elway and looking at those, it's like you said, that underdog mentality and being,
Mhm.
and I think what I admired most about him is his perseverance. He
Mhm.
had three Super Bowl losses, was considered a very good quarterback, a great quarterback, but couldn't win the big game. And then when he would get to the big game, whether it was the 49ers when they lost 55-10, they lost to the Giants, and it just different things like that. You wondered if they were ever going to get over the hump, and then they were going against the mighty Green Bay Packers with Brett Favre, and they just Packers had won the Super Bowl the year before, and Broncos were underdog. Will this be his fourth loss? Because
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's what everybody looks at. Everybody's legacy within the realm of sports is the championships you've won and how many, and then how many you've lost, and they get put in different tiers or different categories based on that. But his grit and determination, whether it was the drive against the Cleveland Browns, the
Mhm.
98-yard drive, or it was what he was able to do with the scramble and the helicopter dive against the Packers and leading to his first Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Just that grit, and then leaving the field to win against the Atlanta Falcons, his last game, and becoming the MVP. And then that's when he retired and everything. Just those things within there. And I mean, even with, and I know you mentioned it earlier, just in the sports part with the Mets and the Red Sox, and we had that one part. Even though I'd like to think Boston has a lot more things to reflect on. I'm still watching 1986 highlights because that's the last time we've won. Boston's won
Right.
quite a few times since
That's right.
then. So it's like, so I mean, I would give anything for just one more World Series. I just don't know if it's ever going to happen in my lifetime. We'll see, but I'm not going to give up. But yeah, it's just those, and I think that's what's the sports realm and those that's what's inspired me as a leader too, because those are those different parts that I've taken, those different pieces of, you know, tomorrow's going to be a better day. It's going to be a new day. I mean, we talked about Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly never won the big one,
That's
but
right.
still his legacy, I mean, you know, is just, I mean, he did so many things, and the things he's done outside of the game. And I think that's what's important. And that's what I try to tell the kids and things like that when they are looking for things. You're going to have different parts in your life that are going to have things are not always going to go way you want, but you can't give up. You can't give up on those dreams. I for my book, I had over 40 rejections before Road to Awesome took a chance on me, but I
Mhm.
wasn't going to give up because I also had to be that role model for my daughter. So in life, when she goes ahead and throws, I want my kids to know that, because when my kids will ask me, they'll say, "So I heard you wrote a book, Mr. Wolf." And I mean, these are fifth graders. I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I said, "Yeah, one thing, you just never give up on your dreams." And the more that people know that's all that, because I never wrote the book to be a bestseller. I wrote the book to impact the lives of others, and that could be one person, and that's all that I would need. That's enough for me, you know and I just think those are those kind of examples, and that's what sports has done for me. That's where reading about different bits, reading the books and reading, I love biographies. I love reading the trials and tribulations that John Lewis went through, and all the different things. His book, that his autobiography, I love that one.
Yes.
Just what they're able to overcome, and it just shows that even when we're in our darkest hours, there are people that have done it, and
Yeah.
we why not have us be the next ones to write that our own legacy through that.
Something as you were sharing that again and circling it back to legacy and Jim Kelly and John Lewis, is those guys did not think in terms of wins, right? They
Right.
they thought in the long game,
Hmm.
and thought about and kept their eyes on, Jim Kelly. Yeah, we're I don't think he woke up, in his heyday and said, I don't, it doesn't matter whether we win today or not, but
Hmm.
he was building a legacy. John Lewis, great personal and emotional and political defeats, right? In the face of overwhelmingly levels of impossibility. And
Hmm.
and here we are talking about him, and here he is. He is studied, and his legacy is lasting, and or I think about a Steve Kerr,
Hmm.
the famous sixth man from the Chicago Bills, or excuse me, Chicago Bulls, sorry.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and taking that, going in and giving Jordan a break and scoring 3 pointers, and
Right.
then here he is, this great coach, for the NBA and the Warriors. So, I think the key here, and the biggest takeaway that I'm getting from our conversation is this notion of legacy, and tuning into that, and thinking about the long game, whether as an assistant principal, father first and foremost, right?
Right.
Um, is powerful. You may have a second book there, my friend. Are you considering that at some point down the line?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I am. I one as we're just talking. I think of the musician Freddie Mercury and his career, how he went from the pinnacle, fell on some rough times, and then came back and was able to what he was able to do at Live Aid, and just that,
Mhm.
you know, going back to even watch that, on YouTube and things. And of course, I love the movie too. I can't,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
great
just
film.
I can watch that a million times just because. But all those things, you're going to have those stumbles. Everybody has them, but then it's what you do, to overcome those. But yeah, definitely, I have other books that I have ideas and things. I For sure. Definitely, like, one of the things that I'd like to do is write through the perspective of just writing something to all educators. And educators are not just those that are in if you dip your toes into the educational waters, you are an educator, whether you're a politician, a parent,
Mhm.
um, front office, district, any of those things. You are an educator, and it's not anything that would be like meant to bash anybody or anything. That's not my style. It's what we can do, because at the end of the day, it's for our kids. What can we do to because I think we have to right the ship. There are things in education, in my personal belief, that are outdated. I think we've done the same thing for such a long time that I think we need to turn the page and rewrite the script. We're losing touch with where our kids are now. And we used to be ahead of the curve at one time, and I think we're behind it. And I think before we go too far with it, we need to really take a look in the mirror and say, what are we going to do different about it to be able to, and what's in our control, and what's going to be give our kids the best, keep them engaged, the different pathways. We talk college, career, and life ready. But college is always at the forefront, and what college is great, but it's not for everybody. I have friends that are in the trades, and they make twice as much as what those that have the college degrees. And to me, that should be celebrated. It's definitely not looked down on. And I think if we present those pathways to our kids at a younger age, that'll cut down on the dropouts. That'll cut down on so many things that we're faced right now. Attendance is a huge issue. Well, if they're not interested in what they're learning, if it's the same thing within the brick and mortar, you have a block for this, you have a block for that. It's not that you're competing with the digital age now. And if we don't evolve, we're going to become extinct ourselves as education, and that's not a good thing. It's they still need us.
Yeah, and it goes back to what kind of legacy do we want to leave when we're no longer doing this gig, and thinking
Right.
about the long game, and then also thinking about how education has to reflect the not only the relevance of today's world, but you also have to keep your eyes on both,
Right.
honoring the value and the good that is in past legacies, and then
Hmm.
also keeping your eyes on the future, and in some cases that future we can't, well, in many cases we can't predict what the future will hold, but we can at least do our best to prepare our students, our teachers, our schoolhouses for being a viable part of that future, the future that you and I grew up with, or when we were children,
Hmm.
looks a whole lot different today than what it will look like 30, 40, even 5, 10 years from now.
Right.
And I think, again, a nod to your title, becoming the change. We have to
Hmm.
embrace that and
Absolutely.
become that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I wanted to highlight with the book too for your listeners as well is within it, it's got its own self-assessment where you can where you currently are at, and you have to be. We always tell our kids we need to be vulnerable, that they need to be vulnerable, but we have to be vulnerable ourselves. So when you take it, you have to be authentic with your answers. It's something you can go back to because through our experiences, we may be strong in self-awareness right now and maybe lacking in responsible decision making, but 5 years down the road, it could quickly uh, be different. And with one of the things how I wrote this book was also just not to have its traditional approach going from cover to cover. But I
Hmm.
don't know if you remember, I grew up on those choose your own adventure books,
Same here.
and you had a pathway to go ahead and choose based on whatever you were going through. So based on if it's dealing with self-management or self-awareness, whatever your strength is or your limitation, you at the end of the chapter you get to choose, okay, what's your path going to be? You're going to reread the same chapter, or you can, so you can jump around in the book based on what your needs are, because everyone's pathway is different. And that's why I wrote the book the way that I did, because your pathway is different and the book's going to be different for you too, so you don't have to read it in any particular order. Obviously I'd love for you to read the entire book, but really you choose your path because it's your life.
Hey, when you mentioned choose your own adventure, I was able to pick up. I just grabbed an old one of my old copies.
Oh,
I
yes,
cherish these books,
yes,
and that yeah, and I'm glad that they're still in print and that they're going through a little bit of a renaissance. So speaking
yes.
of the book becoming the change, how can folks track down a copy? How can folks find that?
Well, it's on Amazon. So definitely once you see the butterfly image and everything within there, and it's got the 5 areas right within the butterfly itself on the different parts of the butterfly.
Hmm.
So Amazon is where you'd be able to find it. And then I even have connections through my social media where I've got a link to not only the book, but then also to different podcasts I've been on, different things about me, my blog that I've been writing, and things like that. So, but yeah, that's the best place to find it.
Nice, Dan. And for folks who do want to follow you and connect with you on social media or subscribe to your blog, not only will I put that information in the show notes, but how can folks reach out to you? What's the best way for folks to connect with
Sure.
you?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at Serve, Lead, and Inspire.
Mhm.
The Serve is without the E. And again, I tell people it's not because I can't spell, it's just that I'm limited in characters. So it wouldn't let me get that E on there. So, but so I'm there.